All right, we are going to go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to the Prepare for the Fair virtual workshop. I've been having a little bit of internet trouble this morning, so bear with us as we navigate that. Amanda, do you mind flipping to the next slide, please? So we're going to cover a couple of things today. We're going to talk about how to navigate the virtual fair. We're going to dive into some research and networking along with some elevator pitch and interview prep tips. And then we'll talk about some of the companies coming to the fair and the different opportunities for you, some last minute reminders, and then we'll open it up for questions for everybody. And we can move on to the next slide. All right, so my name is Casey Petro. I am the Assistant Director of Employer Relations here in Boerigter. I do things like manage Handshake, plan virtual career fairs, connect with employers, anything really employer related, I probably have my hands in. And I'm going to turn it over to Dale Austin to introduce himself.
Well, thank you, Casey. My name is Dale Austin. I've been at Hope for a number of years, and I focus on working with seniors primarily on the transition to either work or graduate school, from job search ideas, resources, to preparing for the interview and conducting a lot of practice interviews. So I'd highly recommend you take advantage of that. And welcome to today's session. We're looking forward to spending time with you. Matt.
Thank you, Dale. I have been here, my name is Matt Adkins. I've been here for approaching 3 years now, but I'm a 2006 graduate of Hope myself. I work very similar to Casey, a lot with outside employers. I work mostly in the business department and the business and economics department, along with the Boerigter Center, trying to bring outside employers to classes, to resume review events. Sometimes I'll help lead resume workshops or events like this. So a lot of my role is tied to getting you ready to go out and see employers.
All right, so we're going to dive in on how to navigate the fair. So we can move on to the next slide. All right, so the fair starts tomorrow at 2 p.m. It goes until 6 p.m. When you register for the fair and sign up for sessions, you're going to have the option between two different types, group sessions and one-on-one sessions. The group sessions are 30 minutes each. Multiple students can attend, so you could have a big group with you, or it can be kind of a smaller group. The one-on-one sessions are 10 minutes. It's going to be you and the recruiter. So you'll have your opportunity to ask the recruiter questions and tell them about yourself. All right. And so when you register and sign up for the fair, you're going to log into Handshake for that. The events section is in the top navigation bar, and you'll select the filter career fair. You can also kind of navigate through all of the events, but if you select career fair, that'll bring it right up to the top. It's going to look like that blue Spring Recruiting Fair logo in the photo on the left-hand side of this slide. So you'll just click into that, which will bring you to the photo on the right hand of this slide, the virtual Spring Recruiting Fair. It has a lot of information and links on that page. So all of the links that you see in this presentation are also located on that first registration page. So you can navigate back to that at any point in time. These slides and this presentation will also be available in the resources section of Handshake. So you'll have all of this information. And if you ever have any questions or run into any issues, please contact us at careers@hope.edu. We'll help you navigate as you need. And we can move on to the next slide. So from the registration page, you will be able to sign up for group or one-on-one sessions. Your front page is going to look like that bottom left picture. So you're going to have available sessions. You're going to be able to click into your sessions once you've made your schedule, and then you'll have details on each company. So to create a session or to create your schedule, you'll click on available sessions, and you'll navigate to the company that you're looking for, or maybe you'll just peruse the list and see who's available. And it's going to look like that Sprinkle Dreams company that I have a little picture of on the bottom right. So you'll be able to see that they have group sessions available. You'll be able to click into those one-on-one sessions and see exactly what times are available. So you'll be able to build your schedule from this page. You'll be able to come back to this page to view your schedule and to log into appointments with employers. You can sign up for sessions up to 1 minute before the start time, but once it's started, you'll be unable to sign up for the session. So if you get home early tomorrow or have a class that's canceled, if something happens and you have more available time, you can sign up for sessions during the fair tomorrow. It's not after they've started. One other thing that we recommend is changing your profile setting, your privacy settings in Handshake. So there are a couple of different options. For the fair, you'll want to have the community settings set. This just allows employers to see your page and for you to share information with employers. If you're uncomfortable keeping it at that community setting, you can also change it back right after the fair. But essentially, it just allows employers to see your profile. All right, next slide. So to get fully ready to sign up for sessions, you're going to want to double check your profile. So we've shared this image on our social media accounts, and you should also have an email in your inbox. But you'll want to make sure that your profile is the most up-to-date possible. So that means including your graduation date, having your GPA, having uploaded resume, all of those things on that list. Because if you go to sign up for a session, for example, and they've set a minimum GPA requirement and you don't have your GPA filled out on your profile, you won't be able to sign up for sessions. So we want to make sure that your profile is filled out so you have access to all of the available sessions that you're able to sign up for. We also highly recommend that you test your internet connection with the first link on this slide. It's also linked on that registration page. Let's just make sure that everything will go smoothly once you log in. More
I'm going to go ahead and jump in here. Casey, if you can hear me, it's breaking up. So I'll jump in, and if it starts to clear up for you, feel free to cut me off. So we're talking about preparing for the fair, testing for the computer audio, I think is where it started to cut out. Yes, absolutely. And I'm not trying to pick on Casey, but this is a good example of why it's important to have an idea of, at least if you're in a spot that has a good internet connection, because you don't want that to happen during a one-on-one session where you've only got 5 minutes to make an impression or 10 minutes with an employer. So test the internet connection. You can also test the handshake video requirement. There's a link there that'll make sure your settings are right so that your camera turns on well within the app if you're using it through the app on your phone, or the desktop version if you're logged in on the web on your laptop. So let me turn it. Casey, do you want to, so I just talked about the handshake video requirements. Do you want to talk about completing your profile?
Yes, so to complete your profile, make sure that you have filled out all of the information in that photo. That will allow you to sign up for all the possible sessions that you can. And if you have any questions about it or are struggling to fill out your profile, please reach out to us and we're happy to help. All right, so this is what it's going to look like when you log into a session. It looks a lot like Zoom or Google Meet, anything that you've used before. You'll have your video going, you'll be able to share and mute yourself. You'll also have the chat going. So if you are having internet issues like I am today, you can turn off your video and you can talk to the employer through audio. You can also have a chat conversation with them. They understand this happens, and they will be able to work with you to make sure it's the best experience possible. All right, so if we move on to the next session, Dale and Matt are going to talk about preparing your message.
Thank you, Casey. And yeah, so if we could go to the next slide, perfect. So the first thing, and this is sort of a basic principle of any career fair going forward, whether this is for in-person career fairs 2 years from now, this is advice that's applicable to any time you have an interview. You've got to be researching your companies. You've got to know as much as you possibly can. And so we'll just talk about why it's important and some specific strategies. Those bullet point lists, those are just some basic suggestions on how you might get to know a company. But the principle is this, that for example, there's a company that's coming, Herman Miller, most of us have probably heard of. The easiest thing that you can do is just go to Google News and type Herman Miller, go, and just see what comes up. This will tell you, is there any major new products that they've released? Is there any bad news about the company? Do you know, maybe there's something, a recent article that says they've gone on a hiring freeze, or alternatively, maybe they've ramped up production and they're hiring 1,500 workers after a recent acquisition in West Michigan. The point is, you don't know any of that until you actually go out and do the research. So going back to the first point, company and industry basics, I think it's also important to just know, you don't have to know the ins and outs and everything about a company, but you should know some basics about what do they do. So, and we'll talk about this a little bit more later, but if you've got the list of companies that you might want to go meet, and there's 5 different companies, don't open the discussion with, tell me what it is that you do. What's your organization's mission? What products do you make? Those are basic things that you should know. You don't need to know necessarily Herman Miller's distribution strategy and their main management consulting partners that they use before a big new product release, but you should generally know how global they are, approximately what are their revenues, how many employees do they have an internship program that's advertised on their website. Those are some basics that you can find just doing a Google search and looking at their company page. Some other things I wrote down, like, so if you look at Herman Miller, I did a Google News search this morning, just for example, and there was an article written a couple days ago about how they're trying to drive healthcare. They're trying to fix healthcare inequality because some of the healthcare facilities, particularly in underserved communities, don't have the same type of healthcare furniture that you'd see at a doctor's office in, let's say, downtown Ada or something like that. So that's an interesting angle on something cool that Herman Miller is trying to do, and that might be of particular interest to you. And you also might be able to tell the employer that you found that out by doing some research. You could also look at their competitors and figure out, is there something in the news that a competitor is doing? And then you could even bring that up and say, you know, I saw that Steelcase is launching this kind of furniture that has some digital automation to it. Is that something you guys are doing? So it's a way to get to know the companies and show that you've done some research. And then lastly, and most basically, find out who the Hope alums are at these companies. It's a really easy way to get a connection or get a foot in the door if you know that we've got Hope alums at these organizations. And again, just for example, Auto Owners Insurance is one of the companies that's going to be coming to the fair. I just did a quick LinkedIn search and we have 9 Hope alums that came up on my LinkedIn search. So there's 9 people that you could reach out to if you are really interested in working at Auto Owners. And we've got Hope alums at a lot of these other organizations as well. So if I could emphasize anything when it comes to job prep, job search prep, interview prep, career fair preparation, research. That'll help drive informative discussions when you're talking to employers. Next slide, please. What is networking? Very broad question, probably something that makes, if you're an introvert like me, it's probably something that makes your insides a little tingly and you feel, I don't know, dirty, or it's just not something that you enjoy at all, or you have to kind of psych yourself up. Okay, let's go work the room. There's an element of networking where that is always going to be the case. You have to force yourself to get more comfortable with it and get good at it. But to take the pressure off, I also want to just talk about what it is. It's not a transactional experience, so don't go into it thinking, I've got to meet Dale, he's on the other side of the room, or I've got a one-on-one with Dale because I need something out of him. I need a job. So just go talk to Dale, learn about Dale, who he is, what he's interested in hiring for, if he's got an internship program that he's here at the career fair representing. What did he study in college? What are his thoughts for either a graduating senior or a sophomore or junior that's looking for an internship? What advice does he have? Just listen. So a lot of this, the best advice I'd have is we have one mouth and 2 ears. God wanted us to be better listeners than we are. Just listen to them and ask them to tell their story. That's the biggest sort of piece of networking advice, is that people love talking about themselves. And so if you're feeling nervous, going into a room or going into one of these one-on-one sessions, or maybe even you planned on joining a group session, but there's only 2 of you fellow students that are there. And so they kind of turn the tables and say, tell me about yourself. Tell them a little bit about yourself, but then ask them questions too. You know, hey, how did you get to where you are today? What is it that makes you so passionate and interested in working at a company like Plant Moran? Ask them their story, and people will always tell their story and always love to talk about themselves. And it also makes you come across as genuine and curious. So it doesn't come across as transactional or ingenuine, if I can make up a word. If the first question out of your mouth is, what do you pay and when might you consider hiring me? If it's just you're getting to know them, you're doing your research, it'll be a much more comfortable conversation. And yes, that stat there is true. 69% of hires, of people report that they got their job or their internship through networking. So it's almost, I won't say a sure thing, but it's very likely you will find your next job or internship as a result of networking efforts. And it's not going to be through clicking apply, and then you get lucky and you get one of those jobs. The networking piece is going to play a huge role. And then just really briefly, just these one-on-one sessions that you have with employers, if and when you do those sessions, think of it like a little mini interview. It's only 8-9 actual minutes of content after you get through any technical issues and a brief intro. So you might get 1, maybe 2 questions that you get to ask. They'll probably ask you 1 or 2 questions. So think about the highlights that you want to emphasize. Think about what makes you tick. Ask them what makes them tick. And why they're passionate about the company. And I think that's an approach that'll make the networking process a little more comfortable for you. And with that, I'll turn it over to my esteemed colleague, Dale Austin.
Hey, thank you, Matt. Great overview. Let's talk a little bit about elevator pitches. You've probably heard the term before. It essentially refers to if you're in an elevator and you're going up a flight of stairs and you meet someone and they simply ask you to tell them about yourself, or you just start a conversation. What are the 30 to 45 second key pieces of your background that you'd stress or that you talk about? And so that's why we call it the elevator pitch. It's pretty common that either in an interview or at a job fair like the one tomorrow that an employer might simply say, tell me about yourself. Or you simply may want to be ready to introduce yourself and key in on some key pieces of information about your background. Of course, the first thing you're going to start with is your name. You can tell them a little bit about what you're studying at Hope College. But your purpose initially is to establish a positive impression. Great eye contact, nice firm handshake if this is in person, virtually, just a smile, good eye contact on the webcam eye of your laptop. And you really, after you say a few words about yourself, talk about some key experiences you've had where you've developed particular skills that could be relevant to the type of opportunity that you might be wanting to pursue at that organization. Part of this process also is that you want to demonstrate a sense of poise, of presence, of composure. They're going to pick it up. And the more you practice this process, the more you're going to have that sense of poise, that sense of presence to make that positive initial first impression. As I mentioned before, typically an elevator pitch is 30, 45 seconds. If you go too far beyond that, they might lose interest. If you say too little, they may not know enough about you to then engage. And then typically at the end of when you're done introducing yourself, you're going to engage with questions for them. And this is going to reflect back on the research that you've already done that Matt talked so nicely about. Your research is really going to be a springboard to having really good questions about them. And you're not going to ask questions that show just such a rudimentary understanding of who they are. You want to have questions that reflect that you understand more of who they are and you can go deeper with the conversation. So in fact, many times employers will tell us that they can do more and deduce more about the strength of a candidate from the quality of the questions they ask is the answers that they give in an interview. So the questions you ask are just as important as those interview questions that we're going to talk about just in a minute. And then as that last point talks about, again, do your homework, be prepared. The next slide, we're going to talk about how to prepare for these interviews, what really things to do. And this will help you really move ahead with a sense of confidence, a sense of poise going forward. Most of us, when we get into interviews, are nervous. We don't want to muck up. Who does want to muck up? And so what we really want to do to try to avoid the mucking up process, which we can all put at the top of our list going into a job fair, is what I call the 2 Ps. We want to really be prepared, that Matt and Casey have done a great job setting the table for. Then we want to practice. Practice talking about yourself. Most of us, when we're going into an elevator pitch, an interview, a mini interview, I don't care what it is, when we're talking to an employer, we're nervous, we don't want to trip over our tongue. So practice it. This is not rocket science. This is really simple. You can practice with a friend, virtually, remotely. You can go into our website on interviewing. We have something called Interview Stream where you can do a little practicing. But practice thinking about how you're going to formulate ideas and articulate them in a comfortable way. So practicing helps us move from what I call interview mode, where we're tight, self-conscious, stiff, we're concerned we're going to muck up, to what I call personality mode, where you can be yourself. You can convey that genuine interest in the organization and what you have to offer them, and ask well-informed, relatively articulate questions to have a great conversation with a prospective employer. And then always have a good idea about the kinds of questions to anticipate that they might ask. From what do you know about our company, for what are you interested in pursuing, to what are your strengths? What's a limitation? But some of these basic introductory questions you can practice, think about, you can have points laid out. And the beauty of a virtual interview is that you can have some specifics laid out around the screen of your laptop. You can have little sticky notes putting around what it is you want to keep in mind, what the questions are that you want to ask to make it as smooth as possible in the conversation. The key, though, is to do not get distracted by those sticky notes. Keep those your eyes on the webcam of the camera so that you can have good eye contact and good engagement. And then after the job fair, consider a nice follow-up to that prospective employer with a thank you to them. Proofread carefully before you send it, and attach your resume. We want to be initiating with employers because the people that are going after, are taking that initiative, are in the best position to then get something coming next, another interview, and hopefully that offer for a full-time role or an internship. So those are some key things with the interview preparation to go into it with confidence. We're now going to go to the next slide. So we're going to learn about opportunities at the fair. Next slide. Here's some full-time opportunities that you want to keep in mind. Some great organizations, and really they run the gamut from for-profit, nonprofit, government, technical organizations, non-technical. So there's something for everyone. And as you look at this list, you know, as Matt said, we've got 9 graduates that work with auto owners. Auto Owners is an outstanding company. There are a number of really great companies on this list and great organizations. So do that homework, identify those key organizations you want to connect with, make a list, make those bullet points about what you know about them so that the time during the interview tomorrow, you can have some things to talk about, you have some questions to ask, but also keep in mind that many of these organizations have a need for staffing positions, internships across the board. Sometimes we think about Gentex and we think, oh, they're an engineering company. I'm studying non-engineering field, whether it's business, communication, something else. They probably don't have a need for me. One of their employees is a sociology graduate that works in their human resources office. So whatever your academic major, these organizations have needs at various levels, from marketing to HR to operations to all kinds of different areas. Also, you think of an organization like Bethany Christian Services, great organization, have a great mission. They love to hire social work, psychology, but they also like to hire individuals that run their accounting operation, that run their HR operation. We've got a 2014 grad who's a good friend of my youngest daughter, and she works in HR, and she studied business at Hope. So there's a range of opportunities that you can connect with. And so keep your mind open, explore as many possibilities, do your research, have your notes ready, and then go after it. And good luck. Next, Matt's going to talk about internships.
Yeah, so the first thing I point out is if you looked at the last slide and this slide, the cool thing is it's just about the same length. I didn't actually count the number of bullets, but I suspect it's within 2 or 3 bullets of the previous slide in terms of full-time opportunities. So the point is there are lots of internship opportunities. There's lots of full-time opportunities. And I'll just reiterate what Dale said. They're across a wide spectrum. There's some great nonprofits. There's some great insurance companies. There's some automotive manufacturers. There's some the state of Michigan's Health and Human Services Department, YMCA of Grand Rapids, the United States Navy. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of them, but some really great missions, organizations with really unique and really neat missions that are going to be represented here at the fair. And so one thing, just to build off of Dale's point just a moment ago, that I could have talked a little bit about in networking is just your approach with some of these organizations. So maybe Bethany Christian Services is your number one organization. You're sort of nervous about it because there's a lot hanging on this one. You really are targeting Bethany Christian Services. One approach, if this was an in-person fair, that we would tell you to do is maybe don't talk to Bethany Christian Services table first, walk across the hall and go talk to auto owners, and then go talk to Sound Off Signal, spend some time with some other organizations, hone that elevator pitch, then go to Bethany Christian Services. And you can do the same thing with the virtual fair. So sign up for a one-on-one with Escape Ministries, work on that elevator pitch, practice your questions, practice how your research actually went. After you've gotten any sort of the nervous bugs out of your system, then go to Bethany Christian Services. And the other point that sort of builds off of that as well, and again, Dale addressed some of this too, is don't ignore companies because you think they might not be interested in your major or the academic department that you spend most of your time with here at Hope. Gen-Techs may very well, maybe in their group session, maybe they even say right up front, hey, we're a big manufacturing company. For the most part, we're looking for manufacturing engineering students. But sure, anyone can come talk to us. Doesn't matter. First of all, you can still get some practice out of your system if you're looking for an HR job somewhere else. Go talk to them, just learn their story. And you know what? They still do hire it's less, but they do hire HR students as interns. They do hire marketing students as interns. Maybe less so than engineering, but if you get the chance to knock their socks off, they may still hire you for a position. And if nothing else, it's still a great networking connection for you. You still leave the impression, those employers still walk away saying, you know what, gosh, I spent the best 4 hours of my week the other day. I was at Hope College's virtual career fair, and these students just asked me great questions. There were comms majors and English majors and poli-sci and business and psychology, and it didn't matter. They all did their research and asked great questions. So even if nothing else, it still leaves a good impression on an employer that may come back around to be helpful to you someday. So don't limit yourself to just companies that you think you might want to work at. Feel free to sign up with other companies that you want to practice with and try to build relationships with as many of these places as you can.
All right, I'm going to build a little bit on some of the research stuff that Matt talked about earlier today. We have 2 resources for you. We have an employer book that's linked here. It's also linked in the resources section of Handshake. This has summaries of every single employer coming to the fair, what they do, what industry they're in, what they're looking to hire for, the grades they're looking to hire for. So this is a great resource for you. It's also in your email as of this morning. So feel free to check that out. Also, on Handshake, all of these companies have Handshake profiles, so you can navigate to them. The picture we have here as an example is Cintas. You can see reviews that other people who have worked at Cintas have had. You can see interview tips, jobs that they've posted. You can also see other students who've worked there. So maybe you know some of these students, maybe you didn't know a friend worked at Cintas. So you can check that out, and you can also connect with different people on campus who might have a connection there. So that's a really good resource as well for you. And we are going to move on and talk about some fair reminders and first impressions. So for this fair, business casual and business professional are completely appropriate. So if you have both in your closet, whatever you're most comfortable for, if you have one or the other, both, you can wear whatever works best. Just make sure it's clean. If you need to iron it, please iron it or hang it next to a hot shower so all of those wrinkles fall out. And put yourself together. Make sure that you have appropriate bottoms on. I know that we're all in this Zoom world and our bottom half doesn't show much, but you never know what can happen, as we've seen in some viral videos recently. So make sure that you are dressed head to toe appropriately. We encourage you to be on time. Some of these sessions will not let you in if you are late. So please do not miss your sessions that you sign up for. And we got some questions last year after our Prepare for the Fair session on backgrounds. Make sure you just have a clean and tidy background. We don't want to see a mountain of dirty clothes behind you or a desk that's overflowing with books and they're falling all over the place. So just make sure it's picked up. If you have your roommate's desk in the background, completely acceptable. Just ask that they move their dirty laundry off that desk if that's where they keep it. You can also go on campus. Boerigter has space available in the Boerigter Center. You can jump in those conference rooms. The library has space. Wherever you're most comfortable, just make sure it's quiet. If you're in a space like with animals like I'm in, I locked all of my pets away. They're in various parts of the house. So set yourself up for success and make sure your background is clean and tidy. If you have questions though, or if some students sent me a picture last semester, feel free. We're happy to answer and help you navigate that. And we'll move on to the next section. So Dale and Matt are going to take off on the do's and don'ts of virtual career fairs.
Yep, so I get to talk about the do's, the fun stuff, what you should do. So they're all really basic, so I won't dwell on each of these, but yeah, figure out the best way to follow up. That's the first point there. So you had this 7, 9, 10-minute discussion with an employer. You felt like you hit it off. Feel free to ask them, hey, what's the best way to follow up? Do you mind if I send you my resume tomorrow? Even if you don't have that discussion, it's still okay if you send the resume, but you might not have their email handy. Maybe they haven't shared it yet. So it's totally appropriate to ask, hey, if I've got some follow-up questions, is there an email address that you'd mind sharing? Or is there someone on your team that I could email? Just ask them that question. That's totally appropriate. The second point of having a notepad or even if it's just a stray piece of paper, that's what I was doing when I did my research this morning. Sorry, it's not showing up well on the camera. I just had a stray piece of paper in the office that I wrote down all my notes for company research and some other things that I wanted to share. And that's something that you can cheat a little bit in a virtual interview. If this was in person and we were across the table and you asked me an interview question and I immediately took out my binder, pad folio or paper, and I said, well, there's 3 things that I wanted to address. It'd be super awkward, and you should never do that in an in-person interview. But as Dale mentioned earlier, I can put a couple sticky notes right around my camera that remind me, okay, tell me about yourself, political science major, interested in nonprofit organizations. Okay, those are the reminders that I want to hit. That's totally fine. And if your eyes veer just for a moment over here to the Post-it, come right back to the camera, that's perfect. And then have a pad down or have a pad folio, notepad or paper, something to be able to take down some thoughts or questions. And yeah, having well thought out questions, we've covered that. Be confident, have some enthusiasm. Everyone knows we've all been a part of probably hundreds of different Zoom calls now, or Google Meets or Teams meetings, or whatever other platforms exist. It's a little boring at times. Hopefully none of you have had that feeling in the last 40 minutes, but sometimes it can get a little boring staring at the camera, and especially if you're an employer, think about them. If they're doing, I don't know, 15 back-to-back one-on-one meetings, that's 2.5 hours of just staring at students through a computer screen. So have some fun with it. Feel free to move around a little bit, have some inflection in your voice. If you're passionate, if you're interested, if you're excited about this company, let them know it. So punch those words and show some enthusiasm when you're having these discussions. And I think Casey already covered finding a quiet space and a professional background. Those are the other big things to do. So that's the to-dos. I'll turn it to Dale now for the don'ts.
Great. Thank you, Matt. So some things to keep in mind when you're going in is I mentioned earlier, and we've talked about the importance of really good questions. So one question that I recommend you don't ask is simply, hey, what do you do? Focus on the role, focus on the organization, focus on the corporate culture. Ask for examples. Say your mission talks about X, like for example, Bethany Christian Services. Could you give me an example of that when you've seen that in action in the last year? So ask really well thought out questions. Not only virtually, but in person. Do not ever chew gum. They can tell. You might be thinking, well, I'm going to store it in an upper pouch of my mouth. No, they see the pouches. Do not try to store it. Get rid of it. Don't even have it near you. Also, if your cell phone is on, it's a problem because the phone call comes in and it interrupts your interview. The last thing you want to have happen. So turn it off or turn the buzzer off. Just make sure it's not going to interrupt the conversation. Do a tech check. Not only the Wi-Fi connection, but also make sure that the webcam eye is horizontal with your own eyes. So it looks like you're looking across at them, not down at them. Most employers don't really appreciate being looked down at. So look across at them, not down, and focus on that webcam. Okay? That's the eye. If you look at the screen, it will look again like you're looking down. So look right at them. You'll be good. And always remember your charger because you never know how much juice is in that laptop. And if it goes dead, you're toast. Try to avoid being toast. You want to have lots of equipment ready to go. All these things, whether it's your cell phone, whether it's the charger, just be ready. It just takes some simple preparation. And so do these things. It will help make sure that your experience tomorrow goes well. And that's what we all want for you. Next, we're going to talk about the big takeaways.
All right. So the fair is tomorrow from 2 to 6 p.m. You can sign up for sessions throughout the fair time, just not after they've started. So if you haven't made your schedule yet, I do highly recommend you get in there because once the sessions are gone, they're gone. We saw very few students release sessions or decide not to go and open them back up last semester. So you're thinking you only have a half hour to do a couple of one-on-ones, make sure you log in today, schedule those, get them on your calendar so you can make sure you're talking to who you want to talk to when you want to. And we are here for you, so you can reach out to any one of us, emailing careers@hope.edu. We're happy to help troubleshoot, answer questions, do a quick pep talk. So do not hesitate. We will also be monitoring that email during the fair tomorrow. So if any issues come up, you have any tech issues, email us and we're on it. We will be heavily checking that to make sure everybody has a really good experience. So from here, we just want to open it up for questions. If you have questions about the fair, if you have questions about some of the technical aspects, what your profile should look like, any of the companies, please throw them in the chat or unmute yourself and feel free to ask us.
I have a quick question. So I'm not able to attend the session that I would like to attend because of a class. I'm going to be in class. What should I do in order to still obtain that information I missed and also still look good to an employer when I ask?
Sure. You can reach out directly to us if you email that careers@hope.edu email, and we will get all of the information to you. So depending on what the session is and what the company prefers, we can share contact information. We can share slides if they've shared that with me. So just let us know who that is and what time that session is so we can make sure to get you the correct information. But just shoot us an email and we can get you everything that you need.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure.
I had one question, and that was, why didn't Sprinkle Dreams in your example decide to sign up for the career fair? Because I saw the confectionery consultant job, and I would have been competing against all the students for that if it was real. But
I know, I wish. All right, well, I'm not seeing any more questions roll in. We will hang out for a few minutes after this session. Any updates we will put on Hope Careers, that our Instagram, we'll put it on our Facebook. If anything happens tomorrow during the fair, if there are any mass technical difficulties, we'll make sure to share it on our social media platforms. So you can also check there if you're running into any issues. But other than that, we wish you the best of luck. Please reach out if you have questions. We're here to help you. And if you wanted to stay after and ask us some questions, we'll be here for a few minutes as well. Have a great rest of your day.